Okay, we are welcome again to another day, and today we continue from where we stopped. All right, we looked at what JavaScript is all about, right, in our last class, and we were able to establish the fact that it is just a language which we use to interact with machines. Your laptop is a machine, of course. So these machines, they don't actually understand what we are saying, okay? And for we to be able to communicate with them, we have to use the language they can understand. We talked about different kinds of languages for machines. We talk of the Python, C++, have Ruby, and the other ones. Then JavaScript is one of them. And we say that it's the language of the web. That's because JavaScript initially was built for the web. That means what you are saying is that website is able to understand JavaScript. It has the ability to understand it, okay? So this web page we are on now, of course, there are a lot of JavaScript stuff that it is running. So that can tell you. So of course, before we can be able to dive deep into JavaScript, there are some concepts you need to know. So we talk about some concepts like variables, data types, and of course, some keywords we use to define variables, okay? And if we must write a language they want to understand, we have to encode that particular language. And of course, we have to allow them to be able to store it first so that I can be able to process it and give us the output. Without that, it will be very difficult. And how do we do this? We see that we can only create variables, okay? And if I should go to my code, we see that this is where we are. Of course, this is us trying to learn how to create variables, and we understand that before you can create a variable in JavaScript, you need to use keywords, var, let, const, which is actually constant. This var is code method, as we had from one of us. And the differences is just based on when you can be able to reassign, okay? So if we look at this particular situation here, we are looking at a place whereby we have some variables created. So for every variable, we have some parts of it. First of all, the keyword, declaration keyword. Second, the name of the variable. Third, the assignment operator. And lastly, the value itself. Okay, this value is what we call the data itself, okay? So every data belongs to a type, okay? Every data belongs to a type. For our own human language, you see that numbers, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they are all data, right? But they belong to a data type, which is number. The normal word I'm speaking, all these things, they belong to a kind of data type, which we see is string. So we see that for machines, we can be able to categorize these data types into two, complex and simple, okay? The simple ones, we can just call it primitive data types, all right? So these are the variables these are data types that stored in single form, okay? So they can only be single form stored in a variable, right? So it's not the variable itself, variable name itself that we are talking about. When we talk about data type, we are talking about the value itself, this value that is contained in the variable. That is what you are referring. What kind of data type is this? We say it is a string. What kind of data type is another one? We say it's the other one, all right? So we see that when we talk of primitive data types, all right, we actually have 5 common ones, which we have seen: number, strings, booleans, undefined, null, right? So we also have compound or complex, which I say is array and object, right? Array, we see that when we want to have a variable that contains a list of items, we need to define it as an array. How do we do that? You notice that for you to have an array, it has to start and the value has to start and end with what? Bracket. So this is bracket notation. And this is how we see that, okay, this is an array of stuffs. Also, we say that object can be something that represents a single entity, all right? So for objects now, we see that a human being, you can treat a user as an object, because a user will have an email account. The user will have first name or second name, maybe phone number, depending on the nature of the application. So that it becomes an object for us. How do we have objects? We start it and close it with what? Curly braces. Object is very unique because it doesn't just contain the values. It contains two things which we call key value pairs. The first one is the key, the second is the value. So it's not just only this, because we can say age here, okay? Let's say 18, right? So you see that object can have different combinations of data type. Of course, I don't want us to be very confused at this stage, but one thing I want us to understand is, just like primitive data types can be any of the data types, okay? We see that array can also contain any of the data types. So even as it's containing this data type, which we see is a what? A string. We can also say 20 like this. It can still take it, all right? We can also include false, which is Boolean. It can still take it. We can also include null. It can still take it, right? So that is what you should be able to know at this point. An array can contain different kinds of data type. In fact, array can contain another array. So we can have something like this, okay? It's still possible. Array can also contain objects, something like this. It's still possible. So when you have this in, we can be able to say name. This, we say mark, all right? And give other properties. We can give comma and give some other properties, just like we have done here, okay? And of course, this array can also contain, you can say 1, 2, 3, 4. So you see that this array contains a list of numbers. A list of numbers, all right? So we can be able to have this thing like this, and that is just what you need to understand. We are going to look at how we can be able to access all these things. So before we can be able to continue, we want to make sure that what we said is that browsers can be able to run JavaScript, right? Browsers, they can run JavaScript. Why? Because they have the engine that can be able to run it, something like a V8 engine. So these are engines, okay? You just have to understand it this way, that machine language is actually very complex, right? In fact, machine only understand binaries, 0 and 1, 0 and 1. So every number you want machine to know. For example, every alphabet, A is represented with a binary code. Okay, B is represented. So if I'm to give a binary code for this particular data type I'm storing, it's going to be very messy. We will not be able to read itself because this is just 0 and 1, 0. So you must know the right sequence and how it is being compiled. Okay, so we cannot be able to use that particular situation to be able to do anything as programmers. If that's what we have, that means we are still in the olden days, all right? So, but you see that we can be able to write these kind of things, and of course, machine can still be able to understand us. Why? The reason is because it doesn't just understand this way. It's going to this particular code is going to be converted to machine language, of course, binary 0 and 1. And what does that? That is what we call the engine. Okay, browsers have the built-in JavaScript engine. So what do? If you have written a code that is in JavaScript, all right, it transforms it to machine language which it can understand. And then machine can be able to understand what you mean. Of course, machine, because of that, machine will give a response, right? And that particular engine that converts it is going to convert it back to what we human beings can be able to read. So it's like a middleman sitting in between we humans and machine. It understands both our language, it understands machine language. All right. So without it, we might not be able to communicate fluently. So for every web browser, most web browsers, they have it. So some of the web browsers, you can go to settings, you see where they say enable JavaScript, all those kind of things, right? But by default, it is there because almost all the web applications we have contains JavaScript. So there is no point. It is part of it now. So how do we actually test it? Of course, from here we can see, because if I click a button, something happens. For the fact that I'm able to use information to what JavaScript must have been used to write this particular stuff, to fetch data from database somewhere. I know you are not familiar with the database now, but that's just a place we can store information. We can still be able to experiment to be able to know what is going on. All right. We're going to right click. All right. You see where we say inspect. I can click inspect to pop up this way. This particular interface is for developers. Okay. In fact, let me just close this one. Come to next college. All right. So let me right click, inspect. Okay. So at this particular level, we can see that this actually is telling us this is for development, for developers, for you to be able to see what is going on the web page. So this is going to tell you all the styles and some of the HTML stuff we used in this particular web page. Of course, you can see you should be familiar with all these things: doc type, HTML, body, some of all these things, class, all these stuffs, class. So you should be a bit familiar with all these things, right? So, but again, we should be able to see that there is a place we call console, okay? Now, this console offers us an interface just like what we have here. We can write JavaScript stuffs there, all right? Can write JavaScript stuffs there and have the results. So we can be able to see how the browser is able to do all this. So let me just say 3 plus 5, right? So we see what we have. I don't know, this might be tiny, but you should be able to see it, right? So we see 8 printed. What is happening? What is happening is that I just wrote a code, all right? Just like I'm doing here. I just wrote a code. This is an integrated terminal we have in every browser. Okay, so I just wrote a code, and this code is just for this browser to be able to read it. Okay, I clicked enter, and it gave me 8, right? Now, what we have currently in this place is just us saying, for example, let me clear this. Name equal to what? Mark. Okay, so let me come down and say const surname. Okay, let me say first name equal to what? Okay, let me just reach you. All right. Now, this is just what we have been writing, okay? But what this thing means is just like you now, you're sending somebody on an errand, you tell the person, take 200, all right? You see, you're just giving the person the information. You're not telling the person what to do about it, or you're not telling the person, tell me, okay, or you tell somebody, 1, you tell the person 1, you say plus 2, right? but you didn't tell the person what's the result, okay? So there is no way the person is going to print out the results, okay? So if we want this to be able to print out results, I can say something like, let's say name, I even said name, and I come and say surname, sorry, plus first name, okay? So of course we are going to have it together. That's okay, totally okay. But we see that it was able to print this. That's because I said print. Okay, I clicked print. It was able to print this. All right. So this is what happened is that once I click enter, the machine gets to interpret this. Okay. And of course, because this browser has something like V8 engine, of course, that particular engine is able to pass this information. Pass is just read, okay? Pass, not like pass, P-A-S-S, no. Pass, P-A-R-S. So it reads this information and it gave me the output, right? That is what we want with JavaScript. When you click a button or when you want to fetch data, okay, you are just telling, when you click a button, you are just giving a kind of instruction to be executed, right? So that is you giving the command. Now, this is possible for we to print this here, yes, and that's because this already has the machine that is capable of doing it, right? But our VS Code on a normal, we cannot be able to run, we might not be able to run JavaScript, right? Here, outside the browser, okay? Browser was built to run it, but this wasn't built to run it, right? The VS Code already also has this kind of a V8 engine, all right, to be able to run it. And again, we need Node.js to be able to run our scripts. Okay, what is Node? We told you guys that initially JavaScript was built for the web. So, and that can explain why browsers can run it, right? But we decided that we should be able to use JavaScript to build other things like backend and so on and so forth, right? So there is a need for us to be able to run it outside the browser, okay? So what made it possible is Node, okay? The Node.js is what we can be able to install, okay? Let's say Node.js, okay? It's something we can be able to install. Okay, so this is Node.js, okay? So this is what offers us the opportunity to make use of. So you can install it, all right? You can be able to install it. You click on this, okay? You see install for Windows, okay? You should be able to choose, it should be able to even check your compatibility. It is something you can be able to install. I already have it installed, right? I already have it, just install it. That's the only thing you need to do, all right? So what can we do? Coming to this place, we can be able to check if we already have it installed. So node hyphen what? V, okay? What does hyphen V mean? Now, I'm sorry to have opened this thing, I didn't even, okay. So of course, we need to be able to, now we want to be running our JavaScript and be seeing it outside the browser, right? So because we are not going to be coming here we are not coming here to be writing the logic, the whole logic to know if it works, or we write this in. This is not where we are going to be developing our application, right? We need to be able to have this kind of interface whereby we can run it and we see the output of what it interprets it to, right? So once you have installed Node.js, we can now be able to open the terminal here, right? How do you open it? You see where they write terminal, the upper part here. If I click it, new terminal. If I click it, something pops up from the bottom, right? Okay, see PowerShell and yeah. So this is the terminal. Now, this terminal is where we can be interacting with some packages which we might be able to be installing in the future. But even if you don't open it from here, you can just press Control backtick. Okay, Control backtick. That's the first button before 1 on your keyboard. Just press and hold Control, then you press backtick. This thing will pop up automatically if you are using Windows. Okay, so this is what we have. So we need to run this particular file. Okay, we need to run this file so that we can be able to print out what we have here, right? What we have here. So if I say, how do you run it? We cannot say I said in there. Okay, let me just place this in there.js. If I click this, there is an error. Okay, so it's just like I want to enter the file. All right, so this we cannot be able to run it. We say that Node.js is what offers us the opportunity, and I'm just going to clear this. If you clear it, this thing will go. So what can we do? We can say node, right? You mention that file you want to run. So I can say node.js. Okay, now it was able to run this code, but we see nothing is here, nothing is happening. All right, and that's because all these things we have here is just an information we have given our system, okay, the machine, to work with. We are not actually telling it what to do about it, right? We are not telling it what to do. So I'm just going to, first of all, comment this, all right? So what I can do here, let me say const num1 equal to 20, const num2 equal to 10. Let's say const total. Okay, because you know this is a machine that is going to interpret all these things. It's not like we human beings. You say, okay, 20 plus 10 is what? You understand? Verbally, okay. Of course, if you don't even ask somebody 20 plus 10 equal to what, the person cannot answer you. If you just tell the person that num1 is 20, for example, let's take you for example. If I meet you and say num1 is 20, num2 is 10, and I keep quiet, what are you going to do? You'll be confused, lost, because I just gave you, but you already have the information. If I ask you, what did I say? You are going to say, you said num1 equal to 20, num2 equal to 10, because it's already saved. You have the information, but what next? Okay, you cannot just print it until I say what is the value of num1 plus num2. You cannot be able to say, okay, since num1 is 20, num2 is 10, that means the value, if you add it together, should be 30, right? So we should be able to instruct our system. Okay, it is an instruction we are giving so that it can be able to listen to us. So if we say that the total equal to, let's say, num1 plus num what? 2. Now, you might be tempted that, yes, it is us telling it like this, but let us run this thing again. We see that nothing. The goal, what I have been trying to do, okay, is to have this kind of thing that prints. For example, if I said const num1 equal to 20, okay, const num2 equal to what? 10, all right? Const total, all right, equal to num1 plus num2, okay? All right, so even at this point, if I click enter, you see that we have undefined. All right, we have undefined. What is he saying undefined? We have undefined because we've just been able to give information give the variables just added information. Okay, so but what happens if I say, for example, this place, let's say total. Okay, now nothing will happen. All right, we are not going to see anything, and that is because we are just telling, we are not asking it to give us the information back. That is not what we are doing here. Before it can be able to give us, we have to tell it to give us what we have to ask that question. What is the value? What is the value? All right. So how do we do that in JavaScript for our development? We can do that by saying console, all right, dot log, okay, something like this, right? For example, if we come at this place, this particular browser interface is the console. You see, we have the console. So when you say console.log, just like somebody saying log out something, okay, log out the information, okay, you are just saying the interface. This interface should be able to give you the output. You want to see the output, all right? So of course, when we say console.log, we are going to put what we want it to log out for us. So if we say num1, that means we want it to print num1 for us. So we're just saying this interface should log out num1 for us, okay? So what do you think is going to happen? When I run this code, we see 20 printed here in the terminal. Now, it's not printed here because this is where we are doing the work. This is now acting as the interface whereby we see what we are printing. Okay, so if I wanted to see the total, what I can console log is what? Total. So when I do this, I see 30. All right. So by default now, even if I add 0 here, I run this script again, I see 120. Okay, so JavaScript now has all it takes. We have given it the right stuff which we are going to look at today, operators. Automatic operator, it scares you, but we have given it the values, okay? That has values, all right? And of course, we have what we just saying is machine, what value of num1 is 20, the value of the total is calculated by adding num1 and num2. The total. That is just simple what we are, that is just, if we should interpret it, that is what we are saying. Very important for you to note this, okay? We understand why we are printing this in at, okay? We now can run JavaScript outside, because of course, if we cannot run way, we can print this particular 120 by running a JavaScript file. This is a JavaScript file. So because we can run it outside the browser here, we can use it to be able to build a lot of things which we want to build, all right? We no longer depend on the browser console to be doing some of all these things, because in reality, we are going to need it for this. Okay, if we didn't have it in this place, it means that we have to integrate, write it to be able to connect with our HTML and some other things before we can now be able to come to browser and load the HTML page and test if it is working. But at this point, we see we can test it at this level and everything is going well. Okay, now I want to take some questions before I enter into the real topic of today's class. Okay, it should be very brief because it's something we all know. Do you have any issue at this point? Do you have any issue at this point? Please, if we should be able to proceed, I want to see your hand up. Okay, just give some reactions so we can be able to proceed. Okay, now we have succeeded in seeing how we can give JavaScript all these things. And Now we can be able to make use of text. All right, JavaScript can be, the machine can be able to make use of text to be able to write some things, all this Boolean. But what happens if we want to perform some stuffs? Okay, so that is what we are going to discuss today, something like operators. Operator is a concept, okay? And of course, there are tools that JavaScript uses to work with data, right? For example, if you want somebody to multiply 5 and 10, all right, the person has to know about multiplication first, all right? He cannot just be able to do that unless the person knows about multiplication. If you want somebody to be able to divide 30, okay, with 2, the person can only do that if the person know something about division, okay? So, and if, of course, in a real life scenario, for we humans, we can do this. All these things is what we can be able to do, and of course, everything is going well. Machine cannot be able to predict that stuff unless we give it those things to work with. Those things to work with. It's not like our own brain. Like, for example, I don't need to say this, you should know about division. For example, you should know about multiplication. You should know about 10. You should know about 2. Then you should know that for you to get multiplication of the two numbers, it should be 2 multiplied by 10, right? I don't need to tell you all these things. What I can just tell you is 2 multiplied by 10. Subconsciously, you already know that what multiplication does. You already know, but you don't know that these are different kinds of instruments your brain uses to process that particular result. Okay, but we have to tell the computer, we have to give it all these things, because we cannot just say 2 multiply, even if we say 2 multiply by something, that's fine, okay? But that particular multiplication, the only way you can know it is by us telling it, okay? That is it. So these kind of things are what we call operators, okay? We call them operators. So there are 3 basic operators we are going to look at in this particular class, all right? So first of all, let me put operators, okay? So of course, I don't know, you might be wondering what all these things we have been learning, and we are still not being able to even add it to our application we have been building. Yeah, I've been seeing the wonderful application you guys are dropping. Yes, and there are a lot of buttons in your application, okay? A lot of things which should utilize JavaScript in one way, but you see, that is one of the things, even the search input. Okay, that is one of the things. All those things are not working because there is no life there. What brings life? JavaScript. So you don't yet know how to add JavaScript to the web pages, all right? So until you learn all these basics, that's the only time you can be able to implement all those kind of functionalities. And that is what we are teaching like this. We are still at the stage whereby we are now knowing how we can give the machine informations through JavaScript as a language. We are still knowing how we can be able to give machine the instruments to use on the data. Okay, the instrument to use on the data. If you have somewhere whereby we have 2 and 5 that somebody need to calculate, for example, let's take calculator for example. You see that when you come to a calculator, you have numbers, all right? Okay, let me see if I can open my calculator here. Calculator, okay? So if you look at this calculator, you notice that these things are just pieces of information, okay? Pieces of information. So if I click 6, it's just me giving the particular program 6. Okay, let's say I've defined a variable that is now holding the 6, right? Then I also need to give it some instruments to work. Maybe I want it to add, right? So what I'm going to click is plus. Now I'm giving it another, let's call it a variable that it's going to use, not variable, but another an instrument that is going to use on those value, right? If I click 3, I have given it another variable, okay? So there is like two variables here, 9 and 3, which is going to use. So if you click add here, what do you think? What we are doing here is, we are just like we are saying console.log, okay? Just like we are saying, tell us the results of the total variable. So there is something like this, that we now have num1 to be what? 9, num2 to be what? 3, then total to be num1. Then we are now saying this clicking, we are clicking is just like equal sign. Okay, what is now the result? All right, what is the result? Of course, that is the only way this is going to be able to execute and give us the answer. So if I click this, you see the answer, right? So if I click node index, if I run this now, you see 12. You see 12. So that is what you need to know. We are yet to come to how to implement it on web pages, but you have to be understanding this basic concept. So if you have known that all these things, all those things you see on the calculator, addition, all those things are what? They are the instrument, they are the operators we are talking about. What is operator? Operator is used to perform some actions between the operands, okay? So in this particular situation, we have how many operands? We have 2. Num1 is the first operand, num2 is the first one. And what is sitting in between is called an operator, okay? Categorically, we have 3 categories we are going to talk about for today. Now we have the first one called arithmetic operator, all right? We call it arithmetic operator. Okay, should I start from arithmetic operator? Okay, let me just start here. Arithmetic operator. This should be very familiar and it should sound very like you already know what it is. Because if you can relate to your human brain, you should know what arithmetic is. This is just us. Machine is just something that is a kind of trying to, it was built. The whole architecture is based on human brain. That's the fact. See, computer is any device that takes information, process information, give out output, all these things. So these are what human brain can do, all right? So the arithmetic operators, these are normal things we use every day to perform arithmetic calculations, okay? What are the arithmetic operators we have? For now, we are going to see that we have plus, divide, minus, okay? We also have minus, we have division, we have also multiplication, okay? There are tons of them, all right? And we can tell that these things are used to perform some operations, okay? Okay, these are the arithmetic operators, okay? These are the arithmetic operators. So somebody can ask you, what is plus used for? You don't need to guess that one. Minus, divide, and multiplication. Okay, so if I change this into multiplication like this, what do you think we are going to print? 27. If I change this into divide here, what do you think we are going to get? We get 3. If I change it to all those our normal calculation, that is what is going on here, okay? So we don't need to waste our time here, right? So that is the first one. That's the first one we need to know. So you now know about arithmetic operator. We use it for operations. So that is basically what we are going to build calculator later, okay? When we now be able to, we can now be able to link it to our HTML. We can now be small calculator that we can be able to play along with, or maybe counter. Okay. So if you come here, you see that we have it here. These are the arithmetic operators, and I can be able to say this, I do this, then I say multiply by 3, I say print. Okay. So that is everything. But what happens, let me clear this. If I just say 10, print, the answer remains 10. Okay, that is what we are having here when I say num1. We can, sorry. When I say num1 and run, and of course run this code, you see that we still print out 9. Okay, so it's not dividing with anything, or maybe addition, all these things. Yeah, but we are just printing out a variable, so it doesn't make sense. It's just you telling us, okay, saying I gave you 1. What is what I get? What is the value of what I gave you? It's just say 1. Okay, it's not performing any operation here. All right. So that's all for this. Okay. The next one we are going to look at is assignment operator. Okay, assignment operator. Assignment operator, how do we know it? We have seen it, right? We have seen it. This thing that looks like equal sign, all right? This is assignment. So what is it doing? It's just assigning a value to what? To a variable, okay? So it doesn't mean equal sign. It's not equal sign. We have a way to be able to showcase that one, but this is just telling us that a variable has been assigned to something, right? So another one we are going to look at is, okay, let's say, let me add to here, let's say assignment, let's say 3. Then this one should be comparison. Okay, comparison operator, right? So this particular one is actually something that the machine uses for logical reasoning. Okay, it's like us telling it to do something based on comparison. Okay, so how do we actually demonstrate this? We can see that for comparison operators, you can be able to check it even in this our calculator. You see that we have, okay, we don't have a less than and equal sign. This, you should be able to have it, but I think, okay, so what do you think when I replace this in with less than symbol? Okay, what do you think we are saying? If I print this, you see that we are going, sorry. Okay, so if I print this, we have false. Okay, so you see that this is what we can use for some logical reasoning, because what this comparison operator does is that by default it returns something for us, and what it returns is a boolean. Okay, this is just like asking somebody, let's say, is 10 greater than 12? You understand? What do you think is going to be the answer? Somebody asks you, is 10 greater than 12? You say no, right? You say no. If somebody asks you, is 1 lesser than 5, what are you going to say? Yes, right? So what we are answering is actually a boolean, because it is either this or this. Okay, it is either is false or true. So we are saying that that kind of situation is normally what we have here. So if you want to be able to make some kind of comparison, okay, to check if something is true, okay, you see that what you are doing here is asking if num1 is less than num2. Num1 by default is, by definition here, is 9. Okay, so if I remove this in just saying 9 is 9 lesser than 3, okay, it's not going to be, it is false, right? It is false. It's not true, it's false. And that's why we are printing this. But what happens if I place greater than? Let's see what we print. We print true. So it can only be true or false. Okay, so this is what we normally use to make some kind of conditional checks, okay, or some other stuffs we can be able to do. All right, but notice that comparison operators, they return what? Boolean for us. They return what? Boolean for us. So here we can be able to see that another comparison operator we can have is equal sign, okay? Because you see that this particular one, we already know that is not an equal sign, right? It is an assignment operator. So we cannot use it for equal sign. So if you want to represent equal sign, we use it with double equal sign, okay? Now, this is now checking if this one is equal to this, right? So let me just replace this with the variable name, num1, num2, okay? So let me print. Now, we are seeing false. We are seeing false, right? Are we supposed to see true? We are asking if this num1 is equal to num2. Are they equal? That becomes the equation. Okay, so it can only be false. We can use 9 here. Okay, so let's run this thing again. We see that it's true. All right, it is true. Another thing we can be able to see here is that there are two versions of equal signs. All right, there are two versions. We have the one that is double, just like this. We have the one that is triple. Okay, there are differences. There are differences. Okay, and the difference is this. When I was teaching you guys about data type, I made mention that we have strings, numbers. Okay, of course, this is a number. But what happens if I use this? All right, you see that the data types, they are different. The num1 is of the data type number, num2 is of the data type string, but they have equal value. 9 is still 9. Okay, so there are two things here. We are talking of the value. Their values are equal, but their data types are what? Different. If I remove this, you see that their values are equal and their data types are the same. Number, right? If you understand this thing I explained. Now, when we are using a double equal sign, we are trying to know if this num1, the value, and the num2, the values are the same. Okay? We are trying to know if the values are the same. We are not interested in the data type. Okay, so even if I print this, you see that we have true, that they are equal. The reason is because we are not interested in the data type. We just want to know if they are equal in value. If they are equal in value only. Okay, but what happens if we are interested in the data type? We don't just want to know if the values are the same. We want to know if they are also equal in data type. That in that scenario, we cannot use double equal sign to check that, because this double equal sign has limitation. Okay, it has limitation. It only checks for the value, not the data type, right? So if I add the third one and run this code again, you see we print false. We are no longer printing true, but what? False. Okay, why? The reason is because this and this are equal in data type, but they are not equal in value. Once they are not equal in the both of them, the thing returns false automatically. Once they are not equal in both of them, the thing returns false. Okay, the both of them, both the data type and the value, they must be equal for this triple equal sign to return true. So if I want it to return true, that means this. So if I run this thing again, you see that it returns true. Okay, so if I have something like this, of course, you know, this one can never even work because the value, they are not the same, even though the data type are the same. Okay, so if I run this thing now, we have false. If I put this is the worst because the data types are not the same, the values are not still equal. So it can still only return false. But again, if we remove this, okay, have this thing to be 9, all right, we see that it comes back to true. We normally use these kind of things when we want to verify some things that we want it to be exact. Okay, maybe you maybe login password or something that it has to be exact because you don't want to do mistake. Okay, right? We are going to see a lot of the use cases anyway in the future, so that's not a problem for us. Now, if we have something that is like equal, okay, equal sign, that means we have not equal sign. In your normal mathematics, you already see that we have something that looks like this. We have something that looks like this, okay, or something like this. Okay, we also have something that looks like this. Okay, sorry, not greater than. We also have something that looks like, sorry, looks like this. Okay, so in this place, if we want to make use of that particular approach, we can be able to add this. So what is this in introducing? This is telling us not. Okay, so if I run this code, we have false. Okay, this one now is interested in if it is not equal to each other. So we are checking if num1 is not equal to num2. Okay, num1 is not equal to num2. So what do you think is going to return? It's going to return false. And of course, what this one is interested in at this point is what? Just the what? The value. It is not even interested in the data type. So if I add this, okay, is it going to return what? False. It doesn't, nothing concerns it with the data type. So this thing is just the opposite. 9 is equal to this, but you are asking, is num1 not equal to num2? If I ask you this question, what are you going to say? You are going to say it is equal to num2 now, okay? You are going to say it's equal to num2. So it is not, right? If you say it's equal to, that means it is not, right? So we are just checking if num1 is not equal to num2, okay? So if they are not equal, we are going to return true, okay? But if they are equal, we return false. That is what this thing is saying. If they are not equal, we are going to, if they are equal, we are going to return false. But if they are not equal, we are going to return true. Okay, that is what this thing is interested in. Such that if I place this, okay, so this statement now is now correct, okay, because they are not equal, so it's true. They are not equal. Okay, that is what we are interested in here. So we return true. So, but if you want to also take into consideration the data type, that means you have to add another equal sign, just like this. Okay, so if you check this one now, you see that we return true because even the value alone is telling us another. So if we place 9 here and run this, we still have true, right? Because this is now checking both the data type and the what? The value. So the data type is failing, okay? The data type is failing, but the values are the same. The values are the same. So this can only return false, can only return true, okay? Because they are not equal, both in data type and value. It might sound a bit confusing, but that's just how you can be able to understand it at this point. So we are just trying to check if the two of them are not equal. If the two of them are not equal, right, we are going to return true. Yes, that two of them are not equal. If the two of them are equal with this kind of syntax, we are going to return false. But because we just want to return true only when they are not what equal. Okay, so do you have any question? Any question? Okay. No, there should be question. Toby.
You know, I always have questions. Anyway, that's all right. My question is this: what's the difference between the two, the double equals to and the triple equals to, and when do we use them?
Okay. I've already explained the difference several times. When you have double equal sign, this is checking for one thing. It is checking the value. You know what value is? 9 and 9, they have equal value, right? They have equal value. They are all 9, 9. None is greater than the other. But this 9 and this 9 are not the same in terms of data type, based on what I taught you guys about the data types we have. The first one is a number by data type. The second one is a number. In fact, for you to check the data type they belong, if it is confusing you, we have a keyword we call type of, we call it type of, all right? So when you just say type of, you want to know the type of a variable, the type of data a variable is holding. So you can just place something like num1, okay? So if I clear this, okay, and run this code again, you see that I printed number. So it's telling me that the type of this is number. So what if I say num2, all right? Run this code, you see that it's telling me string, even though they are 9, 9, but this is of data type number, this is of data type string. So the double equal sign is interested in knowing the data, the kind of the value, not the data type. Okay, you can't use it. This is not a strict check. If you don't want a strict check, okay, something that, but if you want something to be exact, that means you want, if this is a number, this should be a number, and they must be of the same value. That is what it is. So for example, if you are a user, okay, let's say we saved your const db password okay, equal to, let's say h 1 2 1. Okay, let's say this is your db database password. Let's say you registered. Okay, when you registered on Next College, we collected your password, we saved it somewhere, right? That is why if you want to log in, there is something that is happening. It's not just you provide your password and you now see yourself in your dashboard. Something happened. We had to make sure that it is you who wants to log in. Okay, so that means we have to compare your password that you just entered at that moment with the one you saved when you registered the account. So that alone can tell us if you are the actual owner of that account. So you see that, let's say incoming, okay, sorry, const incoming what? Password equal to, okay, let's have this now. Let me have how many H's? 5. Okay, have 1 2 3. Okay, now I want to say const check password equal to, Okay. DB password is equal to what? Incoming password. Okay. Let me say console.log check password. All right. So I'm just going to do what? Comment these ones so we don't have noise. Let me clear this. Okay. So let me run this code. So you see true. Why is it printing true? It's printing true because they are the same. So if it is true, we can allow you to continue using the dashboard. You enter the dashboard. But what happens when we say something like, for example, let's say the password, your password is 9, okay? And the password you use to register is 9, okay? Now, if I run this code, we still see true that the password are the same, right? But this is not good because they are not the same thing. It's just that we are trying to do a lot, some kind of thing, and it can expose weakness. Okay, so in this particular situation, you would like to make sure that this thing is exactly this thing. Okay, and we normally do it whenever, for example, when you are registering, when you want to check, you sometimes you see enter your password, right? You see enter password, re-enter your password. Okay, so that they'll be able to validate the two passwords. So in particular situation now, we see that these things are not the same thing. They are not the same thing. So let me even use that password. Let me not use DB because this one now is not even close to this. So let me say we enter password, okay? Right? So we can have this password. Make sure the names are the same. If they are not the same, you are getting it wrong. We enter password. Okay. So this is just like input field trying to validate your password that you are entering. So you should not be able to make mistake. So if I hit this, we see true. Okay. And maybe if I didn't tell you to re-enter, maybe what you wanted to write is another thing. Or let me say this. Let me just check. Okay. Okay, this will give you false because they have this different this. Okay, so what I can just do, let's just return it to what we already do. Okay, so let me have 9 here. So when I do this, we see true, but these things are not the same thing. Okay, these things are not the same thing. So we cannot be able to give you what you need, and of course you might have issues when you want to log in next time because you just registered with a different thing, and when you are coming back now it's a different thing. Okay, so we would like to make sure that these things are equal in data type and what number. Okay, so in data type and value, sorry. So if I add this triple equal sign, that means I'm being more strict. Okay, I'm not just interested in the value. I want to check the data type and make sure that they are the same. All right. So if with this kind of thing you have entered again, if you enter, I'm going to say false. Please cross-check your input. No matter how you try it, it's going to say false because they are, even though they are of the same equal even though they are of the same equal value, they are not of the same data type. Okay. So we, of course, sometimes we also use it in maybe in IDs, okay? ID with name, okay? With name or all those kind of things. We use it to make sure that these things and these things are the same, exactly the same thing. That is the difference. That is the difference. The opposite becomes the other not equal to. Does that clarify your confusion?
Yes, it does. So in other case, the double equals to checks just the value, while the triple equals to checks both the value and the data type.
Exactly.
I see. Because
Okay.
I had to ask because of the confusion. Actually, what I learned before now was that the double equals to is the non-strict type, while the triple equals to is the strict type. That it's the double equals to it converts the data type to a value. Then that's why it makes it true. That's what the double equals to.
Okay.
While the triple equals to is just exact. That's
Okay.
the thing.
Okay. So that I don't know. You didn't understand what they mean by converting. Okay, but that is something happening behind the hood. Okay, something happening. So I don't know. I don't want us to go deep like that. But let me just
Anyway,
explain it. Eh?
don't let us go beyond that. Let's just learn the basics.
So it's still okay for you to understand what is going on. So it's not actually that he's taking this thing and the two of them are equal. Okay, that is why it's printing through. Okay, but it has a way to convert string. Once they are of the same, of course, it is intelligent enough to know that this is of the same number, but this is a string, right? It is going to convert it to number first before even doing all those things. So that is why you see it. But that kind of conversion is what triple equal sign doesn't offer us. It just have to be what you give it that is going to do. So that's a quick catch. All right. So another thing we are going to look at is logical operator. Okay. And that should be the last for today. Logical. Okay. All right. We have seen what, of course, comparison operator and logical, they go hand in hand most cases. Okay. So what does logical operator do for us? Okay. If you want to send somebody on an errand, you say, okay, get me Coke and let's say meat pie, right? So these things are what the thing you told the person, you didn't say Coke plus something, or you didn't say any of all this operator, you said and. Okay, so these things are logical operator. We call it logical operator. We can use and or, okay, you can get me Coke or Fanta, right? So it's logical because the person has to get it based on the or that is there, right? And of course, the person has to get meat pie and Coke based on what the and. Okay, so it becomes something that is not optional for the person. So the two of them has to be there. The same thing with or. So the two of them must not be there. So it is or. So it's logical. Also, we can also have not. Okay, something get me Coke and do not get me any other thing or anything like that. Okay, so how do we actually present it in this form? So we can be able to say um, um, how do we even okay, let me say, for you to represent and, okay, for you to represent and, we use something like this. Okay, you see and sign. Okay, of course this in ampersand, of course we can use one in normal human being word, but this is not how we can do it in JavaScript. Okay, it has to be this way. All right, so it's what it uses to make some decisions. Okay, it uses it to make decisions. So you can say something like um um let's say for example, you want to make something like if if you are hungry and there is money left, try and buy something to eat. Okay, if you are hungry and there is money left, try and buy something to eat. In this particular way, you see that it is a logical stuff because the person now have to be logical in his action, all right? Taking decision with respect to if there is money remaining, okay? So that is the logical operator we are talking about. So we can be able to use it basically in booleans, okay? When we able to arrive at true or false expressions, okay? So I can say something like, let me just say true and okay, false, okay? Let's try this. So we see false, okay? Now, let's say something like, let me call this, okay? Let me comment these ones. Come this place and do what? I'll comment this one. Let's use this to explain this. So what happens if we say num1, okay, greater than num1 greater than 5, okay, and num2, okay. Let me put this num2. Let me put it 4, okay. Num2 less than 5, okay. So let me run this code and see what we have. So we have true. So this is trying to check two things. And of course, for you to return true, if you are using AND operators, for you to return true, for the whole expression to return true, the left-hand side, okay, must do what? Resolve to true. The second-hand side must resolve to true, okay? For example, if we have greater than 5, of course, we see that if we run this thing, we have false. Not that this one is not greater than 5. Num1 is greater than 5, right? That is true. This resolves to true, right? But num2 is not greater than what? Is not greater than 5, because 4 is not greater than 5, and that is false. For the fact that there is one that is false, everything resolves to false. Okay, everything results to false. So we normally use this kind of situation whereby we want somebody to continue only if the whole things are available. Okay, for example, or maybe you want to do something only if this person is an admin. Okay, let's say how can I be able to link this? So let me say const admin equal to true. I just want something I can use to illustrate this. Const admin equal to true, all right? And const, let's say CRM equal to 2, okay? We have to put it here, okay? Retention manager, okay? Equal to true. So if we say, let's assume we have a protected stuff, we only want admin, okay, to be able to access, okay. Only we want the admin to be able to access. We can be able to just put admin, okay. We put admin here, all right. If we print this, we are going to see true, okay, because the admin is true. This person is admin, so the person can be able to do whatever we want this person to do. But what if we have ID? So we only want an admin that has, okay, let me say valid ID. Okay, this illustration will go. So we only want an admin who has a valid ID to be able to access some particular stuff, okay? So what we can do is that we can now be able to say and, okay, valid ID. So what are we even asking? for we to proceed, these two things must evaluate to true. All right. These two things must be evaluated to true. So in case this person now becomes false, what do you think will happen? We are going to see false. And if maybe we say admin cannot be able to access something because this thing is false. Okay. So let's assume we have a user stored in our database. Okay. So let's say a user in DB, for example. I'm just trying to link these ideas. Okay. Let's say email verified. Okay. Now, in most cases, you see to validate your email account, you need to provide the OTP sent to you, or maybe you click and be able to verify first before you can access anything. Before you can even access the login page, okay, you have to verify first. So after registration, you have a page for verification of OTP, right? You don't see the login page. When you verify, you can now be able to see the login page and some other stuff, right? So what is happening is that there should be a condition like that, something of that nature, okay, that will, of course, make sure that you are a member. Okay, after registration, of course, you become a member, right? You are now a user, but that doesn't guarantee that you have verified your email, right? So it's like, let's say the login page you are protected is that the only person who can access it is someone who is registered and whose email is verified. So if you try to access the login page, you are going to see false because you have not verified your email yet, right? You have not verified it yet. Now, what if we see that maybe, because of course you see that even if somebody is verified, okay, even if somebody is verified, right, we should not be able to, the person should not be able to access the login page again. All right. So let me not just even confuse ourselves. Just know it this way, that this particular condition, this one must be true, this one must be true. What happens if we say or, right? Or, sorry, we use or operator like this. This is called or operator. Okay, is either this or this should return true. Any of them that returns true, you see that we are going to allow this thing to go. So if we click this, you see that we have true. Why? Because one of them is true, not just because this one comes first. It's just because one results to true. Okay, so in this case, we can be able to even say something like this. In most cases, you see making this kind of checks to check input. Let's say name input. Okay, name input. Okay, empty. Okay, let's also have something like email inputs. I'm not supposed to be coming this area, but I just need to explain this. Empty. All right. Okay, now what is this checking? All right. You see that we want to do something. All right. We might want to do something if any of them is what? True. Right? We might be able to say, okay, send this person a message that, okay, the inputs, all the inputs must be entered. You see that this one, user, sorry, I've changed the variable names. Okay, so we have this and we have this. We also have this. Then we have this. Okay, so what is happening? If I run this code, we see we have true. Okay, so that means one of them is empty. One of the input field is empty, so we can't accept this. We have to show something like, for example, now you see that for this particular next college, if I come this place, say sign up, okay. All right, if I hit send, you see that something is happening, right? And that's because JavaScript has been applied to this element, and we are now being able to verify something to check if this thing is empty, and you click something here to send. All right, we can't continue because we detected that this thing is empty. This thing is empty. So the logic might just be this or this or this or this. All right, if any one is empty. So you see that even if I enter something here, I can still not submit this because one of them returns true, that it is empty. Okay, so I think this can be able to help you understand it. So another logical operators we are going to look at. Okay, the final one is not. It's called not. Okay, we have seen and with something like this. We have seen or with something like this. And now we are going to see not with something like this. Okay, so we have even seen it when we were dealing with this particular comparison operator when we say not stuff. So we normally use it hand in hand, just like I told you guys. So this thing now is not. Okay, so if we apply it, for example, let me clear this. If we say place this not at the back of this, okay. Of course, you place it at the back of the beginning of the variable, not at the front. So if I run this thing, we say false. Name input is true, okay. So what we are asking is if it is what? False. That is this not. That is what this not is asking. Okay, if it is false, we are going to print it. Okay, so of course it is not false, it is true. Okay, so we print false. So we can, if we say, if we put false here, all right, and we run this code, we see that it's saying true, that yes, name input is false.